For 35 years, I ran a company that created security systems. But for the last year, my home security failed completely. I knew my life was under threat, and I trusted the one man I shouldn't have to help me fix it. He didn't fix the lock. He just waited until I finally put the single item he needed right into the center of the trap. Believing I was still watching.
My name is Arthur. At 58, a man trusts his eyes. I trusted the three people who were my reality: the girl I married, the friend who became my brother, and the person I saw every day in the mirror. That illusion of stability dissolved in the quiet terror of knowing my wife, Mira, was seeing another man. Our 35 years of shared life were collapsing around me, dissolving the joy of running AR Systems, the company I founded with Robert and worked tirelessly to build into a global name. The crisis started simply: cold silence at home, evasiveness on her part, and the painful dread that Mira's love had simply expired. The night she missed our sacred anniversary date, I was finally forced to name the cancer. She was betraying me. I was the executive leader of a powerful corporation, but in my own life, I was helpless. The thought of confronting Mira, of risking the final destruction of the company we both financially depended on, was too much. I needed a soldier, an anchor, the single most loyal man I knew to guide me through this final, brutal battle. That man was Robert, my friend since childhood. The only person whose loyalty I knew implicitly was forged from decades of mutual struggle and total transparency. I went to Robert's office late, an utterly defeated man. He listened, silent, while I poured out the rawest pain of my life, the shame of suspecting my own wife, the fear of public scandal, the dread of confronting Mira's lie. His response was immediate and complete, exactly what I prayed for. "I won't let you fall, Art. I won't let some snake destroy the man who built everything. We're going to treat this like the professional hostile action it is. You and I, we find the evidence and we annihilate him." From that moment on, Robert took the operational command of my ruin. He secured a top-tier private investigator who would operate off the books and managed every minute detail of the surveillance, justifying it as essential legal shield against an emotional collapse that could tank my position in the industry. He named the shadow as the executive, a vague profile he created, a rival I had to focus all my hatred on. My trust in Robert deepened into total reliance. My emotional life was in constant crisis, and Robert used that weakness brilliantly. He ensured I was always distracted by the right things, while he and Mira executed the next phase of their long-term professional scheme against me. He came into my office with a calm, business-like worry, convincing me to make specific technical changes on my own security systems, always framed as protection from the executive. The corporate archive transfer. Robert spent 2 weeks urging me to move our company's single most valuable asset, our master source code and client database, out of our secure internal servers and into a new complexly managed external storage vault that only he held the master access codes for. "Art, we can't let this executive use your messy divorce to breach our most sensitive information. We secure it with external professionals." I agreed instantly, relieved to take a huge liability off my personal shoulders, unaware I had just granted him and Mira remote, untraceable command over the entire technical DNA of AR Systems. The Executive Financial Command. Our large company decisions, our multi-million-dollar expenditure invoices and internal acquisition moves required 2 signatures, mine and his. Citing the immediate need for rapid defense expenditure related to the constant legal and financial maneuvering of the divorce defense, Robert convinced me to agree to a new, urgent, temporary crisis protocol that delegated sole, temporary financial signing authority for certain massive operational expenditures to the CFO's desk. You can't have emotional meetings with lawyers all day and sign off on a $10 million merger, Art. Let me shield you. We're partners. I signed the papers in exhausted gratitude, unaware I had formally given away the financial keys to the company vault and secured the single power he needed to sign the final document of my eventual collapse without my consent. The perilous proof of concealment. Mira, all the while, intensified her duplicity. She adopted every security measure that Robert's investigation conveniently required for a good counter-strategy. She constantly changed the lock code on her personal study, used anonymous prepaid burner phones for certain intense, whispered conversations, and began subtly obscuring her financial movements from the domestic accountant, all actions designed to defeat the executive's PI, but which in reality were covering her tracks from me while I struggled to sleep in the bedroom beside her. Robert and the staged PI reports reinforced my paranoia, giving all her necessary secretive actions a clear, logical defensive reason. The combination of the growing professional betrayal, Robert moving the entire financial core, and the gut-wrenching personal lie, Mira feigning anxiety, created a prison of total manipulation. The executive I was paying Robert to hunt was a complete fabrication, an elegant narrative designed to facilitate their clean-sweep professional takeover. My pain was the weapon they leveraged. My trust was the security risk they engineered. My sole final task became maintaining my perfect performance of the trusting, collapsing husband, keeping the massive, critical boardroom fight strictly contained to my marital woes, allowing Robert to solidify the final piece of the corporate seizure. They had built the most comprehensive trap in my life. I knew, with every rational fiber of my being, that they were winning, but I would not reveal my suspicions of Mira to Robert. The director of the investigation would remain utterly blind to the fact that his client was now his fiercest, silent surveillance expert. The entire corporate world believed Robert was defending the firm. Only I knew he was building its final death trap, funded entirely by my broken heart. My entire life had condensed into one mission: performing the part of the grieving, incompetent husband, while internally acting as the relentless internal auditor of a catastrophic double betrayal. I lived by the singular creed of survival. Never let Robert or Mira see that the investigation's director has become its chief surveilled subject. Robert's help continued its perfectly calibrated march toward my professional ruin. He would schedule hushed, late-night sessions with me to review the latest PI reports, all while systematically emptying the technical vaults of AR systems. My feigned despair gave him all the air he needed to breathe life into their scheme. He spent one solid month securing the physical relocation of all our most sensitive assets. My old security systems, which were basic, designed for physical hardware protection, were useless against Robert's cold logic. Art, the executive, is targeting the financial backbone. We have to treat the source code like unbonded treasure. I've chartered a highly discreet, highly secure firm to manage a climate-controlled vault in Delaware. Only our names will be on the manifest. He provided a perfectly valid technical need. Source code needed cold, specialized storage. He never pressured me. He simply laid out the risks of the executive stealing the whole firm's foundation, and I gratefully agreed to hand over the necessary access codes, not to him, but to the secure facility manager. I convinced myself I was doing the most responsible thing a grieving CEO could do: insulate the core product. I had just provided the complete inventory and transfer protocol to my thief. Mira, the other half of the conspiracy, adapted with terrifying elegance. Her primary concern was protecting her private conversations. Our entire home was built on shared smart home technology and a central secure line. Now, she was obsessively disabling cameras, disconnecting voice-controlled features, and demanding new, dedicated hard lines be installed into her office suite, claiming my emotional state meant no privacy was guaranteed. Every new digital defense she mounted to communicate secretly with Robert was, ironically, funded by me, under the guise of creating her own secure professional workspace to manage our affairs for me. I allowed her the illusion of her safe communication, the digital equivalent of placing the loaded gun where I knew I could disarm it. My counter-investigation focused on their communication patterns. I couldn't break the encryption on their burner phones directly. Robert was too good a CFO for a simple security slip-up. My focus turned to timing and movement. I had memorized Robert's official corporate flight manifest, as well as Mira's vaguely scheduled spa retreats and industry planning trips. A crucial fact emerged only after meticulous comparison of the two schedules. They weren't always in the same place. Robert frequently traveled immediately after Mira left the house, meeting her hours later at destinations that had no AR Systems office, let alone a supposed off-site strategy team meeting. The distance confirmed that their entire relationship, while having intimate interludes at local hotels, as suggested by the fake PI reports that Robert had so subtly dismissed, was primarily a coordinated strategic asset. The ghost executive became their greatest shield. Robert presented me with an escalation. The private investigator had located compelling financial activity linked to the executive, strongly suggesting he was moving to invest personally in one of AR Systems' key rivals.
Art, we can't ignore this. The executive isn't just sleeping with your wife, he's trying to tank the firm. He knows all our Q3 growth numbers. He's preparing to attack us on the NASDAQ. I need full financial authorization to create an emergency legal war chest against a hostile short seller attack. His logic was perfectly structured. Use the fear of infidelity to justify a drastic, unnecessary financial move. The emergency war chest meant liquidating core company assets to pay for a colossal private line of credit, which Robert, now having the temporary delegated sole signing authority, could then access and bleed the firm dry. It was the final nail in the company's coffin, a perfectly timed economic panic, entirely financed by my fear. I agreed, feigning sudden emotional paralysis. Do whatever you need to do, Rob. Protect the firm. I can't look at the numbers right now. This final, crucial sign-off gave Robert total liquid access to our accounts, a disaster I had to allow to proceed. Now I needed irrefutable proof that this financial move wasn't just corporate defense. It was an act of personal aggression against me. My solution was tactical espionage, using the one device Mira and Robert forgot, the older generation landline phone system in my home office. While my modern communication was digitally secured, my dusty secondary private office phone, an outdated but still operational model, retained its original features. I was sure that, given the sensitive nature of their stolen files, they would still have some method of out-of-network hardline contact. Using the equipment of my old police days, a simple, custom-built digital recorder, I wired the dusty secondary phone. I waited. Robert and Mira, feeling completely secure in their technological camouflage, made the inevitable, crucial mistake. It was midnight. I heard the sharp ringing from Robert's twin desk. He was calling me directly on our secure emergency partnership line, but he wasn't calling the office. He was calling the forgotten landline. The recorded conversation, minutes later, was short, precise, and utterly cold-blooded. It wasn't about sex or late-night tryst. M, we're live. Art agreed to the short sale fund transfer. He signed off. Mira's voice, smooth, devoid of all emotion. The money is out. Is it enough? Robert, more than enough. Project Phoenix is green light. You need to finalize your divorce lawyer documents and keep the executive drama at full blast for the next week. He needs the diversion. Our 48 hours is set for next Wednesday. Then the entire Q4 transfer is clean. We own it all. The truth was an atomic bomb delivered through static. They were divorcing me financially at the exact moment I thought I was hiring a lawyer to divorce Mira personally. Project Phoenix was the code name for the total, hostile takeover of AR Systems, to be finalized next Wednesday, leaving me without my marriage, my job, and my entire net worth. The executive name wasn't a warning about an outside threat. It was a distraction. It was their alibi for the impending economic panic they were creating.
My sanity broke only slightly. I was a man living two separate lives simultaneously. The grieving, incompetent fool to my traitors, and the methodical CEO auditing the very conspiracy designed to kill him. I had 48 hours to assemble the legal counterforce necessary to block a corporate maneuver orchestrated over months. The fight was no longer over infidelity. It was a complete economic civil war against my wife and my best friend. The cold precision that Robert admired in business was about to become the weapon that dismantled his existence. The stage was set for the absolute counterattack. The voice recordings from Robert's secure hardline didn't just confirm the affair. They revealed the colossal financial operation beneath it. I was facing an act of multi-level grand larceny disguised as marital turbulence. They were planning a full financial strike against AR Systems in the middle of the next week, the time they labeled their final Q4 transfer. The stage was set, and I had exactly 6 days to perform a miracle of corporate defense while maintaining my role as the patsy. My home and office instantly morphed into a field headquarters for a one-man corporate defense. My primary action was establishing the financial and logistical facts. The money they believed they were stealing, the huge liquidity event from the emergency war chest transfer, was merely the operational float. Their real goal was the voting rights of my massive majority stock in AR Systems, controlled via an obscure series of limited partnership contracts only Mira had the legal authority to sign off on in case of my death or prolonged medical incapacitation. Their rush, I realized, was not about selling the stock now, but about positioning it for a total hostile vote a month later, a maneuver to strip me of my voting power, control, and ownership in one fell swoop. Robert and Mira were trying to murder the company to take over its legal body. My life became a brutal contrast. By day, I was the visionary founder and the emotionally drained husband, trusting Robert's guidance implicitly. By night, I was a spectral security analyst reversing their moves. My defense had to dismantle their financial security and their emotional confidence, all at once. I needed to make their immediate financial environment unsafe, and I needed to ensure my initial reaction appeared exactly as Robert had planned, a panicked, emotional breakdown over the divorce, but one directed not at Mira, but at their fabricated antagonist. The next morning, I confronted Robert with a piece of information from the latest PI report that he had supplied to me, but used it with an entirely different fury. "Rob, your guy, the PI report, it says the executive booked a luxury resort stay for this weekend, the same resort where Mira supposedly spent her wellness retreat 3 weeks ago? That money, that snake is using company resources to lure my wife.
I want the money back, Rob. I want every penny.
Robert, satisfied with my manufactured rage, calmed me down and assured me the financial track was under review. But I, Arthur, made a simple move right in the middle of our conference call. I had secretly located an internal company system that handled the regulatory audit trail. While Robert talked, I silently executed a small surgical maneuver. I triggered a deliberate, highly technical error in the primary audit trail file for the last 10 corporate expenditures that Robert had made with his accelerated spending power. This wasn't sabotage. It was a procedural hiccup that would be dismissed as post-merger system latency in normal times. But coming from the CEO's administrative access just before a colossal liquid transfer would instantly raise internal accounting flags so massive that external regulators and the board's audit committee would notice, slowing their final money movement to a crawl. They had been exposed not by my accusation, but by their own system's internal alarms. I created chaos at the one place Robert feared, the relentless scrutiny of our accounting team. Robert's confidence in his surveillance strategy was his single greatest vulnerability. He was the perfect, controlled master of logistics, completely dedicated to my pain. I used that belief to turn the PI against him. I contacted the high-priced, incredibly discreet PI firm Robert was running on my account. The firm, assuming my orders were approved and urgent due to the sudden multi-million increase in their retainer Robert had authorized using the crisis fund, immediately executed my secret new request. I directed the PI to follow the executive's travel profile, the precise man who did not exist, and place a complete and elaborate set of listening and surveillance equipment, funded by my defense account, in a specific abandoned commercial property across the street from a corporate registry office in Miami, where Robert and Mira were due to meet next Wednesday, the final Q4 transfer destination. My instructions were cold and perfect. Record the executive's final corporate movement, full surveillance, all access, record and archive the findings with triple redundancy, and transmit only to my secure personal server. Robert believed this surveillance was pointing toward the executive. The truth was, my trap would record Robert and Mira's movements on the very day of their intended financial takeover, ensuring irrefutable video and audio evidence linking them together at the climax of the crime. Mira's behavior was reaching the breaking point. She was tense, furious at my inability to finalize the divorce fast enough. Her goal was an early exit to solidify the narrative of the executive influence and ensure her innocence. I played her anger for my strategic defense. One evening, I cornered her with manufactured sorrow. "Mira, Rob told me about the financial evidence linked to the executive. The PI found records of payments on your personal American Express account. This man is a user. I'm ruined financially. Tell me what's true."
Her response was venomous, revealing her desperation and financial stakes. "He's not using us. He's protecting me. He's shielding my investments. You don't see the complexity of the finance, Arthur. Just sign the divorce papers. It's better for all of us. This executive will take everything if you don't file the final papers now." I smiled in genuine relief, an internal expression of victory. Her passionate denial confirmed two things. She had financial culpability she desperately wanted hidden, and her obsession with getting the final papers signed was not just an exit strategy. It was the final trigger for a larger financial mechanism I had not yet uncovered. Her executions documents were her ultimate professional betrayal. I needed those. The final gambit before the climactic flight. Robert left a voicemail on our secure corporate line that Mira answered in front of me, a calculated slip-up meant to reinforce my paranoia. The voicemail was distorted, hurried, confirming the executive was indeed traveling to Miami and was preparing a large asset liquidation,
demanding emergency full authorization signatures from Arthur for any immediate corporate response. I simply sighed, played the victim, and told Robert via the speakerphone, "Send me the authorization papers, Rob. I'll sign anything you say is needed." The documents arrived 40 minutes later. They were 2 papers. One, a legitimate internal risk disclosure form I had to sign, and the other, carefully concealed beneath the standard technical paperwork, was a single high-stakes document. Mira's completed, signed, and executed private separation and non-disclosure agreement. The final proof she was ready to deploy her separate exit strategy. I quietly placed the papers on the side table, only signing the mandatory risk forms I needed to approve, but securing the absolute evidence of her total professional readiness for divorce. The 2 players, confident in their deception, believed they were in the middle of a perfectly staged, controlled victory. But my own clock, the single final act of the CEO as saboteur, was now entirely operational. I knew I had secured enough rope to hang both of them simultaneously. The pressure inside my home became so immense it was almost physical. Mira's constant low-grade fury over my inability to immediately file for divorce was relentless, a demand driven by her guilt and the internal calendar of their betrayal. My own actions, performed under the perfect mask of profound grief, had put their catastrophic scheme on an expedited, irreversible timeline. Next Wednesday was the day. Miami was the location of their dual act, Mira's final walk into freedom and Robert's professional collapse of AR systems. My secret counteroffensive focused on the business where I was still ostensibly the CEO. Robert's financial maneuvering, orchestrated through the emergency powers I had granted him, accelerated at a terrifying rate. The creation of the emergency war chest was not a subtle affair. It created a paper trail of unprecedented corporate debt, raising major flags internally, flags only I, the CEO, could override and approve. Robert constantly urged me, via secure phone line and brief, private, anxious meetings, to suppress the financial analyst's alarm reports and approve his next set of urgent transfers.
I always complied, feigning intense exhaustion and relying on the trust of his word. I signed the documents, pushing the firm deeper into debt on purpose. My goal was no longer merely to expose the crime. It was to let them complete the financial act of self-immolation. The colossal debt they were taking on, believing it to be the perfect legal smokescreen for their hostile takeover, would, under my hidden restructuring plan, immediately and catastrophically flip onto their personal financial statements the moment their coup failed. I wanted them not only stripped of their illegal gain, but saddled with the maximum corporate loss. But the complexity of their treachery meant my position was intensely vulnerable. The biggest legal shield they prepared was their argument for my incompetence. My forced retirement from my corporate duties, a total and comprehensive psychological breakdown triggered by my wife's infidelity, was their strongest card in a massive future civil suit. I had to assume that every minute I spoke to Robert was recorded and audited, building a long, devastating profile of the unfit CEO. I decided to create an impenetrable, untraceable external alliance that had nothing to do with AR systems and everything to do with legal defense against financial terror. I contacted an ancient friend from my early police days, now a top-tier legal prosecutor, Elizabeth. She knew the moral rigidity of my past. In a highly secure, hour-long phone call, placed from an anonymous public terminal 3 towns away, I explained the entire dual plot: the wife, the partner, the hostile takeover, the use of financial instruments to weaponize personal misery, with the cold precision of a crime analyst. I provided her with 2 single, highly encrypted digital files that were crucial for the case: the audio of the landline conspiracy call and a clean copy of Mira's executed divorce papers. I asked her not to interfere, Not yet, only to assemble the final legal war machine and stand ready. My return to the house was tense. Mira was preparing for her trip to Miami, assembling the perfect wardrobe of final freedom. She was elated, seeing the light at the end of her marital tunnel. I gave her the alibi she needed, a detailed explanation that I would be traveling separately to a specialized trauma therapist outside of the state for immediate and necessary personal time off. My goal? Be completely off the map when the whole disaster erupted in Miami. The final piece of Robert's direct treason arrived on the eve of their departure. Robert met me in the executive lounge, smiling, relieved, holding a glass of the vintage bourbon. "Mr. Art, everything is ready. The final documents for Project Phoenix are structured, but you, as CEO, must give me the digital command protocol that executes the entire multi-billion-dollar acquisition from the source code servers." He presented me with a simple technical prompt on his high-security tablet, an explicit final authorization to unlock the source code archives for Project Phoenix and assign Robert as the new Master Access Director. It was, he explained with calm rationale, necessary to run the complex algorithms alone in Miami and finalize the company's biggest move while I recovered. His eyes held absolute conviction. I saw the betrayal, the arrogance of his belief that I would never question a request framed by 2 decades of unshakable loyalty. I smiled, slow and tired, played the victim perfectly, and digitally input the authorization code that he required. He left, triumphant, believing I had just given him the corporate death penalty, a belief that gave him all the confidence he needed to proceed. But I was not just Arthur, the broken CEO. I was Arthur, the founder. Our entire network was designed with my single technical backdoor. I had just provided him with the digital execution key, but I had executed the transfer under a specific protocol that granted him master access to a decoy, archived, non-functional set of source code, the complete structural inverse of our active servers. The money would transfer. The shell corporation he planned to use for the hostile takeover would purchase a vast warehouse of utterly worthless technical documentation. The foundation of the firm, our current operating system, and the legitimate core of our wealth were entirely secured and beyond his reach, and he wouldn't realize it until he launched the system after the stock market closed in Miami. The single largest threat to our operation, the corporate intelligence that defined us, was now fully secure. Now I just needed the proof of their crime, and the only proof they could never fake, a personal item used as an alibi. I went into Mira's large closet, completely secure in her confidence that I was just the shell she was leaving behind. Hidden within a small suitcase of intimate items she was taking to Miami was a simple piece of clothing, Robert's custom-embroidered linen handkerchief, an absurdly unique item he insisted on wearing only for big events. The sight of the double-embroidered initial R from the family crest he never spoke of filled me with a sudden, final certainty. He was prepared to commit to the public relationship, even in small visual gestures. I simply placed a small, discreet GPS tracker, a final tactical gift from my partner Elizabeth, inside the fabric fold. I wanted the perfect crime to remain imperfect. I wanted their physical proximity to their professional collapse to be permanently archived. I secured my plane tickets under an assumed name, several hours after their departure, for a flight that would take me to a separate city only 2 hours away from Miami. My final position in this great game would be the ultimate position of power, the hidden witness. The next day, as I kissed Mira goodbye, a gesture she accepted with impatient, almost irritated coldness. I left the man she hated behind. I had all the technical resources, all the emotional resolve, and all the final codes I needed. My grieving performance was officially over. I was headed south, to Miami, not to save my marriage, but to ensure that the three legs of the perfect stool of my life, wife, friend, and money, would all collapse entirely into their well-deserved pile of financial and legal ruin. The day of their final victory was about to be turned into my final checkmate. The simple sight of Robert's personal sedan confirmed my final move was not based on conjecture. The sleek car was parked precisely where my clandestine GPS tracker indicated, near the executive entrance of the Grand Midas Tower in downtown Miami, the symbol of fast, aggressive capital. This was the target destination, the corporate registry office for the final acquisition. Mira was nowhere to be seen. They hadn't entered together. They were professional until the final line.
I found a quiet observation post in an adjacent high-rise, a position that provided a clear, undeniable line of sight to the massive electronic stock market sign across the street. The clock on that digital sign became the official countdown to my utter destruction, or their absolute downfall. I was in position, fueled only by bad coffee and the singular, immense rage that sustained me through this final operation. I used the encrypted tablet given to me by Elizabeth, my police ally, which provided complete real-time tracking of my subtle GPS tracer and real-time news alerts. The silence of the wait was deafening, the emotional terror only matched by the methodical, almost serene performance of the sun moving across the immaculate Miami skyline. I needed proof not just of the romantic betrayal, but of the precise financial betrayal at its moment of execution. At exactly 11:30 a.m., my heart delivered a cruel, final blow. I saw Mira. She exited the lobby, but she wasn't alone. Her arms were linked not with Robert's, but with another man, one I immediately recognized. A junior executive I'd seen frequently on corporate review reports, one I had mentored and entrusted with minor accounts. My mind, reeling from the realization, grasped instantly. The affair was with him, the junior exec. Robert was merely the handler, the silent co-conspirator who set it all up. The betrayal, once again, had another layer. Robert had leveraged my vulnerability perfectly by framing the executive as an external threat, keeping the true threat, Mira's young lover and his ambitions, totally off the board. My entire theory had been built on one half of the massive conspiracy. I nearly lost it all then. I fumbled for my burner phone to abort the complex sequence I had initiated. I thought I had failed. But the true, horrifying symmetry of the triple betrayal corrected my view instantly. Mira's physical contact with the young executive ended sharply as they met Robert at the base of the elevator. Robert greeted the junior executive with a brisk, firm handshake. He smiled, a triumphant, cruel smile of mastery, and handed him a physical, official legal folder, a document I immediately recognized as the key financial release document that triggered Project Phoenix. The moment was caught forever. The junior executive took the release, and then Mira approached Robert, her public performance dropping. She reached up and placed a slow, intimate kiss full of undeniable private ownership squarely on Robert's lips, not the junior executive's. The final truth was a brutal punch that eliminated all past rationalizations. Robert was not the handler. He was the mastermind of the conspiracy. He leveraged both a public affair, the junior executive as the initial cover for Mira's secretive behavior, and the primary secret affair, his intimate relationship with Mira,
to construct a security framework so layered I would never suspect him, the lifelong friend I cried to every night. Mira, cold and precise, was committing the ultimate relational and financial double-agent move, managing both relationships for maximum profit and strategic security. The emotional shock, the simultaneous final image of the romantic act, immediately followed by the decisive professional transfer, cleared my mind completely. My focus snapped entirely from the emotional pain to the digital clock, the time for their final legal act. I knew that a legal document this critical requires an official public record and witnesses. My primary defense weapon, the decoy source code transfer protocol, was initiated seconds later, with absolute certainty, utilizing the remote system I created weeks prior. I deployed my first act of professional justice, the digital collapse of a perfect crime.
At the official submission time, my private security partner Elizabeth executed her command, while Robert, Mira, and the junior executive finalized the transfer with a massive New York hedge fund on the other end. The corporate vault he opened immediately recognized and distributed the worthless, archived, decoy source code. Robert's transferred funds, the emergency war chest money he acquired via my delegated signature, went directly into the corporate escrow account. They received a worthless pile of obsolete technical files. Their coup was dead. I ensured the visual confirmation. I activated the final setting on my secret GPS tracker, a final transmission protocol that activated a single, intense flash of red LED light that began to pulse erratically from the small pouch I had attached to the lining of Robert's jacket sleeve, the jacket he carried with him everywhere. He saw the flicker. Robert's calm corporate posture completely dissolved as he stared down at the bright red pulse emanating from the single sleeve that wasn't covered. He was the one who designed the security systems. He knew the specific hardware signature of a physical surveillance tag, and he knew that tracker wasn't on the executive. He finally understood, in that public space, that his entire world was under digital siege by the man he was just finishing to bankrupt. He looked up, scanned the horizon with terrified, predatory intensity, hunting the phantom watching him. He finally knew the extent of my knowledge. I had the intimate truth and the professional ruin. It was time for the final curtain. The single pulsing red light on Robert's sleeve in the Midas Tower lobby was my signal to begin the final sequence of my life. He knew. They knew. I knew. The time for surveillance, grief, and masked loyalty was utterly exhausted. My final position of power was not in the chaos of the public space, but in the cold, unyielding arena where I spent my honest working life, the AR Systems headquarters. My plane landed hours after theirs. I immediately contacted my lawyer, Elizabeth, and deployed the pre-prepared contingency lawsuit for hostile takeover and corporate malfeasance. The evidence, the audio tape, the forged release papers Mira signed, the entire financial map I built during my time as the grieving husband, was presented with devastating, organized fury. The legal siege against Robert and Mira had begun. I did not wait for the court. I knew where they would be. The aftermath of a massive financial transaction gone immediately wrong requires total, urgent containment. I drove straight to the AR Systems offices, my office, where they were meeting, desperately trying to salvage their shattered coup, convinced that the source code transfer was merely a small delay. I found them not in Robert's sprawling suite, but huddled in a small, secure conference room, their war room for this disaster. Mira was pacing, terrified. Robert was working with furious, futile intensity on a console, attempting to regain control over a system that, unknown to him, had completely detached him from the active code base and access ports. They hadn't divorced me personally, but they had professionally killed my corporation. And that corporation, now secured, was about to file its last catastrophic legal document against them. I entered the room without warning. The moment they saw me, my face wiped clean of all sadness, every inch reflecting only cold, ruthless CEO. Their immediate terror confirmed every last piece of the conspiracy.
It's a mistake, Art. I swear. That deal, it went south. You have to approve the reversal immediately. I was trying to protect you from the liability. Robert shrieked, a terrified man attempting the one desperate lie that used to work. Mira, frozen by fear, only managed, "Arthur, I can explain the divorce, not the business, but the rest is a mistake." I walked to the table and calmly pushed two items directly in front of Robert. One was a transcript of Robert's landline conversation, the "we own it all" chat that revealed the timing and financial intent. The other was the obsolete, printed 2005 source code archive that his massive transfer of funds purchased. The worth of the obsolete paper? Absolute zero. "There is no explanation for the business, Robert," I stated flatly. "You bought an ancient, uncompilable system that died 12 years ago. Our real system, the one you attempted to hijack and destroy for short-term profit, is now safe. You signed your corporate death warrant when you gave the funds the decoy code. You were going to be a titan. Now you own a single box of expensive office waste." I handed Mira her final document, a civil summons from the company, not the personal divorce paper she feared, but a notice for total restitution of corporate funds, aggravated corporate theft, and a freeze on all marital assets, a document ensuring that not $1 they intended to seize would ever reach them. Their utter ruin was total and immediate. They were cornered and finished, trapped inside the room with their shame. The ensuing civil litigation was swift and brutal. My initial strategy, to let Robert and Mira personally incur maximum corporate debt, worked with terrifying efficacy. Because I had successfully secured the company and exposed the theft of my corporate vote, the courts immediately forced the financial disaster of the failed hostile takeover, the liquidation fees, the transfer penalties, the astronomical line of credit Robert drew in my name directly onto their personal statements. Robert's financial life and future were instantly ruined, leaving him completely bankrupt and forever barred from our entire industry. Mira was implicated completely, losing her professional standing, facing massive civil liability, and receiving zero from the inevitable divorce. I walked out of that 35-year contract entirely whole, my net worth secured by my intelligence, not my anger. The ultimate victory was my solvency and my future, at the expense of their utter collapse. Robert was forced to appear in a closed-door boardroom meeting to legally terminate his partnership. He made no excuses, offering only the truth in a voice devoid of its former arrogance. "You always deserved better than this, Art. Mira and I were afraid of the scale of your life. We wanted our own, without having to answer to the moral pressure of yours. You had it all. We thought we deserved a peace, whatever the cost."
I signed the severance paper without comment. Robert was immediately stripped of his residual shares and company title, the paper I signed legally erasing him from my world, my family, my life, my work, my history. The partnership, a brotherhood forged over decades, dissolved under the searing heat of his moral void. Mira's final destiny was one of total professional and personal shame. Her family rejected her entirely. She became a complete social outcast, a cautionary tale whispered throughout our former social circles. I, Arthur, the man who engineered this catastrophic victory, was left utterly alone, my greatest personal relationship, and my deepest professional relationship were revealed to be nothing but a long, beautifully staged deception. I lost the woman I loved and the man I trusted in a single blow. But I gained something far more essential: total self-respect and the unwavering truth of my own judgment. My last official act as the redeemed founder was to initiate a comprehensive management change, distancing myself from the toxicity of the high-stakes game. I sold my substantial stake in AR Systems, the company that cost me my peace, but which ultimately bought me my freedom. The price was immense. Today, I live alone, financially absolute and completely whole. My victory wasn't loud. It was simple. I kept a single memento from my operation, a small digital picture on my desktop, not of Robert or Mira, but of the pulsing red LED light I had placed on the sleeve of Robert's jacket, the final flash of absolute digital truth. It reminds me daily that trust is a system that, once betrayed, is simply the perfect blueprint for the architect of your eventual annihilation. I drive to the beach most mornings, enjoying the clean salt air. I no longer check my phone for lies or stock drops. My peace is secured by a truth only I fully own. I have replaced a life based on external validation with one entirely based on self-contained certainty. And the man who lost his life has finally found a sovereign future, one honest step at a time.